Could you please welcome back to the stage President of the World YMCA, Patricia Pelton.
I hope you enjoyed your break, and we're going to get right to it in this session because we have a very, very special guest speaker. It's now my honor to introduce our keynote speaker for this 20th YMCA World Council, His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who He's joining us by Zoom from Seoul in the Republic of Korea. He's a man really who needs very little introduction, but who merits much. As founder and co-chair of the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, he is himself the embodiment of the global citizen and bases that global citizenship on deeply held values and a passionate commitment to a better world. Like so many great and driven men, his own story profoundly affected his work. He was 6 when the Korean War broke out. One of my earliest memories, he said, is walking up a muddy road into the mountains. It was raining. Behind me, my village was burning. When there was school, it was under a tree. Then the United Nations came. They fed me, my family, and my community. A South Korean diplomat and foreign minister, he became the UN's 8th Secretary General in 2007. His time in office is remembered especially for his developing and championing the Sustainable Development Goals, which succeeded the Millennium Development Goals. The SDG agenda represented huge progress already made and a profound need to deepen and widen and lengthen that progress and make it for the good of all. Given that our own Vision 2030 is specifically aligned with the SDG agenda, we can perhaps see him as a godfather to our project, not the mafia godfather, but the spiritual godfather. He will also be forever associated with convening the 2015 UN Climate Change Conference in Paris in December 2015 and presiding over a massive breakthrough in global consciousness and collective will to address the existential problem of our time. It was he who gave us the unforgettable line that there is no plan B because there is no planet B. We are thrilled and excited that he's accepted to address us today, and we're going to take a few questions afterwards, and Mr. Ban Ki-moon has agreed to do that. Your Excellency, with all our thanks, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear President Patricia Pelton, for your very kind introduction. Dear Secretary General Carlos Sanvi, dear YMCA representatives from around the world, it is my great pleasure to join you for the YMCA World Council virtually from Seoul, Republic of Korea. First of all, allow me to congratulate you on the launch and adoption of the YMCA Vision 2030. It is certainly a big milestone of unification of a collective vision and mission. This is exactly what the world needs at this moment: global, inclusive, and collective action for a better future. We are stuck in a tangle of alarming, severe crises that demand urgent action. The worsening climate crisis is impacting every aspect of our lives. It's further increasing the threat of violent conflicts, health issues, and food insecurity. In Yemen, the war has been raging for almost 8 years. Syria's crisis grinds on into its 11th year. Over 2 million people have been forcibly displaced by the ongoing fighting in the Tigray region of Ethiopia due to brutal violence against civilians. While Afghanistan's humanitarian crisis plummets to extreme levels of deprivation, Myanmar's military faction expand the scale of conflict, increasingly involving civilians. Most recently, Russia's unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine forced 6 million people to flee the country, while more than 8 million are internally displaced. These complex emergencies are set against the backdrop of transnational planetary challenges like the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which has cost the lives of more than 6 million people around the world. All of these extremities have consequences far beyond their immediate impacts. And we need diplomacy and multilateralism more than ever if we are to resolve these conflicts. Dear young YMCA leaders, you are part of the world's oldest youth empowerment organization, which spans across 120 countries, reaching over 60 million people a year. This is a platform and network that represents great diversity, great collaboration, and great opportunities. I'm always inspired to speak to young leaders because you, young people, are continuously stepping up. Where the leaders of my generation are failing to tackle the challenges of our time. Today, there are around 1.8 billion young people around the world. The coming of age of the biggest young generation of history will not only determine the course of your own lives, but also that of our world. As United Nations Secretary General, I made it my priority to not only work for, but with young people. I appointed the first ever envoy on youth, Secretary General's envoy on youth. He was just 28 years old, Mohammed Al-Hendawi from Jordan, to bring the needs and rights of young people closer to the work of the United Nations. Everyone has a right and to have their voices heard and have a role in the decision-making process that shape our communities. The right to participation is a fundamental right, and it is one of the cornerstones to enabling an inclusive society. However, a huge proportion of the youth population worldwide is not only not represented, but also excluded from fully participating in society. Especially in developing countries, this is even more evident. In terms of education, 175 million young people are not able to read a full sentence, and 30% of the poorest children between age 12 to 14 years are out of school. When it comes to the job market, 71 million young people are unemployed. For girls, systemic barriers to access to education are even higher. They have less time for school than boys, as they provide essential but invisible care work from an early age. However, when young people are given the right tools of empowerment and the opportunity to speak and raise their voices, they become effective drivers for change. When I was 18 years old, in 1962, I was selected to join the American Red Cross Operations VISTA, V-I-S-T-A, that is abbreviation of Visit of International Students to America. That brought me and other young students to the United States from some 40 countries around the world. Our group was invited to the White House, and I was electrified by President John F. Kennedy's remarks. I knew I wanted to help my country recover and grow peaceful and prosperous. President Kennedy told us that good work has no borders and no nationality. This was the message, and this is the message I have tried to spread throughout my career. We have a moral responsibility to act wherever we are and however we define our place on this earth. I call that global citizenship. I see the concept of global citizenship as a key enabler. It equips current and future generations with the knowledge, skills, the values necessary to understand that the challenges we are facing: biodiversity loss, extreme weather conditions, extreme poverty, inequality, political instability are global and not local. Therefore, together with the former president of Austria, Heinz Fischer, I founded the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, headquartered in Vienna, Austria. Our vision is to build a better, more sustainable world based on universal respect for human rights, regardless of age, gender, identity, religion, and nationality, through a global citizenship mindset. We strive to empower current decision makers and future change makers to implement my two big legacies, which are the Sustainable Development Goals with 2030 Agenda and the Paris Climate Change Agreement. My team and I are proud to have welcomed aspiring and ambitious young leaders like you from Africa, Latin America, the ASEAN region, the Middle East, and Europe, who seek to strengthen their capacities, take action, and become local or international SDG leaders as part of our programs. As you know, the centrality of young people in policy and practice is key. Investing in programs, policies, and initiatives led by and for young people will bring about sustainable change in the livelihoods and health of young people now and in the future. There are an estimated 1.2 billion young people impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic response measures. Disruptions to education, employment, services, and social support have changed the future of an entire generation. Yet, young people are also an essential part of the solution to pandemic recovery. They have shown us all remarkable ways out of COVID using their digital skills, adaptability, and as well as their empathy. We must support and scale up youth-led solutions and youth engagement programs across the world. It is more important than ever that governments, policymakers, academics, business leaders, and civil society come together to find innovative ways of supporting communities and providing hope to younger generation. Dear change makers, dear young leaders, I am convinced that small actions taken by each one of you can move mountains and can ultimately play a crucial role in achieving our universal 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. As a Ban Ki-moon Center, we encourage our young change makers to spot a real-world change, work on solutions with a targeted action for the SDGs that reach a wide network of people. We call these SDG micro projects. With these projects, the young leaders address a specific societal challenge that needs to be transformed into an opportunity on a local, national, or international level. We must all push the limits and go further in finding innovative ways that will allow us to address the urgent challenges we face now and achieve global commitments collaboratively and inclusively. That is why adopting the YMCA Vision 2030 today is crucial in creating the world the YMCA wants to see and realize. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Now I look forward to hearing your experiences and answering any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for that insightful presentation. Did you hear? The YMCA is exactly what the world needs with its platform and network of young people representing great diversity and opportunity. And thank you for bringing the first youth envoy to the UN. We work very closely with the current youth envoy, Jayamatha, so we really appreciate that. And note that good work has no nationality and no borders. And global citizens as change makers are a key solution. So I think we're right on track here. But let's get to the questions. So I'm very glad that you've agreed to take some questions. For the sake of simplicity, we did a collective poll before the meeting among a group of our leaders and received really some very interesting ones. And so we hope we have the time for all of them, but let's get started. Number one, the YMCA has established our own globally unified vision, Vision 2030, with 4 key pillars of action, which are specifically derived from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These are community well-being or health, meaningful work, employment, a sustainable planet, looking at climate action, and a just world, looking at social justice. In which of these pillars do you believe the world has made the most global progress since the inception of the SDGs?
Well, I can tell you that SDG, which was adopted in September 2015, is by far the most ambitious and most far-reaching vision the United Nations has ever presented to the people of the world since its founding. So in that regard, I'm very proud. It's well-balanced. But if you ask what is the most important one, I think every goal has its own merit and impact and importance. But my point is that the number 13 goal, climate change, that should be addressed and implemented as quickly as possible. Because if we do not address climate change phenomena, which is approaching much, much faster than we might have think, then we will, I'm afraid to tell you that all other goals may not be realized may not be implemented because it can just wash away it can destroy all of our societies, every aspect of our society. It is important that we must make sure that by 2050, we contain the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. If not, that's the end of our world. Now, unfortunately, as of today, as of now, the global temperature has already risen 1.1 degrees Celsius. There is only 0.4 degrees left. Can we contain the global warming in coming 30 years, 28 years, under this 0.4 degrees? That will be almost impossible. That is why the older countries must realize carbon neutrality by 2050. If we do not address this climate issue, then poverty will increase, extreme poverty will increase. There will be more pandemics, more viruses, because global warming. The scientists say that more than 1 million types of viruses are frozen under ice, in Arctic ice, because Arctic ice are rapidly melting now. Sea level is rising day by day. And therefore, I hope that all the government leaders, business leaders, and even private citizens like you are, then you have to do all what we can to prevent the further rising of global temperature. That is my strong message and my answer to you.
Thank you very much. That's a That's a huge call for action, and it's always so challenging to get policymakers to really buy into it, because there's always short-term reward for not producing big change that we need now for the future. So thank you. That's a call for action for all of us. Thank you. All right, let's go on to question number 2. Youth-led change has been the engine of the YMCA since our inception 178 years ago. What are some bright spots that you have seen with respect to young people's role in helping to address the SDGs?
I think soon the young people will receive our baton from us, from current leaders. It's very important that the young leaders learn and understand much more on the very seriousness of climate change happening now. For that, quality education will be extremely important, crucially important, quality education. We have to teach young people and let them learn the exact what is happening and what will happen. But not many countries and not many people, schools, they are taught about the current environmental challenges. I have been speaking out to political leaders, educational leaders, that from the elementary school level, they have to learn ecology, how environment works, how important our world. Nothing is taken for granted. I think there's a huge, there needs to be a huge change of behavioral patterns of all of our society members. Even a single drop of water is precious. Water is not free. It's the most important, most valuable asset and material which human being is privilege to use. But people are just taking water for just nothing. But water is the most important, and soon most of the countries around the world will experience the water scarcity problems. So what I'm emphasizing is that education from younghood until they become the leaders of the society. When they become the leaders of society, they are fully knowledgeable and armed with the necessary skills and knowledge to address the climate issues. We should not repeat what our previous generations have made mistakes. Of course, I can understand fully for them how to live better and raise the quality of life. That was the most important aim. But by doing that, they have been abusing the privileges the nature has given us, like emitting greenhouse gas emissions without any sense of worry for the future. Now, we really must make sure that our political leaders, current political leaders, they raise the level of their ambition and do whatever is necessary, take action so that they will not leave much burden to young generation who are now rising up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We could just listen to you all day, Ban Ki-moon. Thank you. We have another question for you, and then I'm going to ask you for the opportunity if you're going to have anything else that we haven't brought out that you would like to say, but let me get on to the third question. The last question we've received seeks a bit of more of a personal perspective. So as you look back on your career as a world leader, most surely you have faced your share of successes, failures, opportunities, and challenges. As you think about our world today and what we will face in the future, our question is simple. What gives you hope?
Now, looking back at my almost 8 decades of life as a public, of course, you know, I have spent about 50 years in public service, including Korean domestic and United Nations. One lesson which I learned is that everyone, wherever one may live, you know, in different places, I think we must remember that we are all same human being, regardless of where you are living. We are all same human being. The nationality, or boundary, or sex, or professional jobs, I do not mean much. We have to be all one global citizens. When I introduced my experience with President John F. Kennedy in 1962, what was really inspiring for me, even though I was just a young 18-year-old boy, he said that the national boundaries are not important, do not mean much. He said, at that time, national boundaries were much more seriously restricted. Between East and West, communist and democracy, Soviet, you could not go to Soviet Union or Cuba or any other countries without a visa. Well, it must have been very difficult, which I could not understand easily what he was talking about. He said, what is more important is that whether you are ready to extend your helping hand to others. That I could easily understand. That was inspiring because the world was not even in terms of level of development, world was not even in terms of human rights. There were many, many people whose human rights were just not taken, seriously. Men versus women, and colors of a human being, or level of incomes. Rich people were enjoying much, much better privileges than the young people didn't have any place to stand. He said, what was most important is that whether you are ready to extend your helping hand to others. That was inspiring. That now I realize it was sort of compassion. Young people, I think your heart must be full of passion, full of passion. I will do this, I want to do this, and I can do this. This is all for your very selfish, for your own self and family. But what is important is that you are living with other people around the world. 8 billion people. They're all your friends, relatives. So we have to make sure that we are not alone. Nobody can live alone. And in this 21st century, where we have 21st century technology and the information or science, so we have all the benefits. There is nothing which we cannot do if we are really committed. But at the same time, there is nothing which you can do without working together. However powerful, however resourceful one country may be. For example, United States is the richest and most powerful country, but US cannot address climate change issue alone. All the people should put their hands on the deck together. That is what we say, global partnership. Global partnership more largely among government leaders, business leaders, and civil society leaders. YMCA is a civil society leaders. Then without all these three panels working together, then we cannot achieve anything. Therefore, I'm asking young leaders, be ambitious, at the same time, be compassionate to others. If you cannot balance between passion and compassion, then you may not know where you are going. And if you really want to contribute as a global citizen with the global citizenship, you have to think and you have to work with others. That is what the United Nations has presented, Sustainable Development Goals. So we have guidelines. So I'm urging you, we should work together to realize a world better for all, sustainable for all the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, honestly, I think we need more JFKs in this world who are so ahead of their times. We certainly see them, but we need them to give them voice, to influence our political leaders. And, you know, you talk about all being one world, but that boundaries aren't important. If you look at what our astronauts say that have gone to space, they just say there you can't see boundaries from the space station. It is all one world, and people just don't get that. Very important. And I love the last piece that you just said, balancing compassion but ambition. It's going to take both to actually become a global citizen, so thank you. Now, before we close off this session, I'm going to turn it back to you. Do you have any other comments you'd like to share? Or do you have any particular advice that people, when they walk out of this auditorium, can take with them and start enacting?
Well, I think I have said almost all what I really wanted to convey to you. At this time, I'd like to really thank you, the members of the YMCA. There is another aspect of YWCA, but in any way, since the beginning of the 20th century, and even before that, YMCA has influenced and contributed greatly to the societal development of our world. The Korea also has been very much benefited by the spirit and the lessons and guidelines of YMCA and YWCA. Of course, depending upon the level of development at that time, the role of YMCA was much, much greater. Now in 21st century, when all the people, anybody can have access to necessary information and technologies, there may be some lesser way YMCA can contribute, but the spirit and guidelines and the basic idea is all by the YMCA is very much important, in line with what SDGs and climate change agreement has been suggesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, and young leaders of YMCA, let us work together to make this world better for all, sustainable, and please remember that what you are doing for your generation may be important, but it is important to leave your legacy to succeeding generations. So this is the world where we ourselves and yourself and our succeeding generations will have to live sustainably. Please keep that as your promise. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.
Thank you everyone for this opportunity. I wish you all the best. See you again. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And I'm going to turn it back to the host now. Thank you.